It was supposed to be the happiest day of my life. The music was soft, the air smelled like lilies, and everyone in the room had that polite, blurry smile you see in wedding photos. I remember standing there, my hand shaking just slightly as my groom's fingers found mine. For a moment, everything felt perfect, until I felt a shadow lean close to my ear, and my mother whispered, "You don't deserve him." The words cut through the music like a shard of glass. I smiled for the camera because that's what you do when your whole life has been about pretending. My mother's perfume, a mix of rose and something bitter, lingered as she stepped back, adjusting her pearls like nothing happened. And just like that, my wedding became a memory I would never be able to look at without feeling that sting behind my ribs. You have to understand, my mother wasn't always cruel. Or maybe she was, and I just didn't want to see it. Growing up, she had this way of making love feel conditional. Compliments came with a price. Every achievement of mine was measured against someone else's, usually my sister's. "She's the pretty one," Mom would say, laughing as if it was harmless. I learned early on that approval wasn't something you earned, it was something she granted when it benefited her. But that day, that whisper wasn't just cruelty, it was jealousy. And the realization of it hit me slowly, like cold water spreading under my skin. When I walked down the aisle, my eyes searched for her in the crowd. She was smiling, wide, proud, perfect. No one else saw it. No one could have guessed that behind that smile was resentment. My mother, the woman who raised me, who should have been the first to celebrate my joy, couldn't stand the thought of me being happy in a way she never was. As the reception began, she floated through the room like a queen, complimenting the flowers, chatting with guests, taking credit for things she never did. My husband's family adored her. They thought she was graceful, charming. I stayed quiet, watching her laugh, realizing how many years I'd spent trying to be the daughter she'd pretend to love in public. Then came the toasts. My husband's best man spoke first. Funny, heartfelt, easy. My maid of honor followed, her voice trembling with tears. When it was my mother's turn, she stood slowly, wine glass in hand, and for a moment, my heart actually hoped she'd surprise me, that maybe she'd look at me and say something kind. But her eyes, cold, sharp, told me exactly what was coming. She began with a smile. "Our little girl always wanted attention," she said, the crowd laughing gently. Even as a child, she couldn't stand to see someone else in the spotlight. People smiled politely. I froze. Every word was coated with sugar but poisoned underneath. She told stories that made me sound selfish, dramatic, ungrateful. My guests thought it was humor. I knew it was humiliation dressed as nostalgia. I watched my father shift uncomfortably beside her, his hand twitching toward her arm, but he didn't stop her. He never did. My husband reached for my hand under the table, his thumb brushing against mine, as if to ask if I was okay. I wasn't, but I smiled anyway, because that's what I'd been trained to do, make everything look fine. Her final line landed like a slap. "Well," she said with a laugh, "I guess miracles happen. Someone actually decided to marry her." The room erupted with awkward laughter. My chest tightened. I felt the air leave my lungs, but I didn't flinch. I just looked at her, really looked at her, and for the first time, I saw not a mother, but a woman who hated seeing her reflection outshone. That was the moment something inside me shifted. The hurt didn't disappear, it transformed. And as I raised my own glass, I decided to do something I had never done before. I decided to stop protecting her. The wedding hall was still buzzing, though my mind felt eerily still. Liam was across the room laughing with his best man. The sound of his voice, so warm, so alive, should have comforted me. But all I could hear was her whisper echoing in my head. "You don't deserve him." It wasn't just a sentence. It was a lifetime compressed into 4 words. I took a slow sip of water, hoping the coldness would drown out the heat rising behind my eyes. My mother sat at the next table chatting with her sister as if nothing had happened, as if she hadn't just stabbed me in the heart on the most important day of my life. She caught me looking, and she smiled. That same smile she used to wear when I'd win an award at school. Tight, proud on the surface but brittle underneath, the kind that cracked the longer you looked at it. When I was little, I used to think her silence was love in disguise. Now I saw it for what it really was. Resentment dressed up as restraint. "Hey," Liam said softly, appearing beside me. "You okay?" I blinked, forcing a smile. "Yeah, just tired." He didn't buy it, but he didn't push. That's one thing I've always loved about him. He knows when to stand close and when to give me space. But that night, space was dangerous, because space gave my mind room to remember. There was a day when I was 14. My mother was standing in front of the mirror, fixing her hair before a dinner party. I told her I wanted to wear makeup too. She turned, laughed, and said, "Oh, sweetheart, let's not pretend you're the pretty one." It wasn't cruel in her tone, it was casual, almost affectionate, like she was stating a fact. But that sentence burned a permanent mark somewhere inside me. Maybe that's when I started believing that being loved was something I had to earn. That approval was currency, and I never had enough. I thought marriage would change things, that seeing me happy would soften her edges. But it didn't. Maybe it made them sharper. Because when Liam proposed, my mother didn't cry like I expected. She looked me up and down and said, "You're sure he's not rushing this out of pity?" That was her gift, making poison sound like concern. So now, sitting in my own wedding dress, I started to realize that nothing I did, no success, no milestone, would ever fix the part of her that broke before I was even born. The music shifted. Someone tapped a glass, calling for a speech. My father stood up, clearing his throat. "I just want to say," he began, voice trembling with emotion, "we're proud of our daughter. She's found someone who loves her truly." He looked at me, then at my mother. For a second, I thought he might add something more, something real. But instead, he just said, "To new beginnings," and raised his glass. Everyone clapped. My mother leaned in, whispered something to my aunt, and laughed. I didn't even want to know what she said, but the weight inside me was growing heavier. I felt it pressing against my ribs, urging me to speak, to break the silence that had ruled our relationship my entire life. When it was my turn to give a toast, I stood up slowly. My heart was beating so loud I could feel it in my throat. I looked around at the sea of faces, friends, family, strangers, waiting for the bride to speak, and then I saw her eyes, calm, expectant, as if daring me to stay quiet like I always did. "Thank you all for being here," I began, voice steady. "It means everything to have the people I love around me today." A pause, the kind that stretches like glass about to crack. I took a breath, looked straight at her, and said, "Even the ones who taught me what love isn't." A ripple went through the crowd. Someone coughed. My mother's smile froze. That was the first time in my life I saw her mask slip. And in that moment, something inside me finally woke up. But I wasn't done yet. The air in the room shifted. You could feel it, that uneasy stillness before a storm. My mother's hand, perfectly manicured, rested still on her champagne glass. She didn't blink. She didn't breathe. She just stared at me, her lips curling into that half smile she used whenever she felt cornered. I should have stopped there, smiled, sat down, pretended it was just a vague line, a poetic mistake. But I didn't. I'd swallowed too many words for too many years, so I kept going. "When I was a little girl," I said, my voice shaking just enough to feel real, "I thought love meant trying harder. I thought if I was quiet enough, perfect enough, maybe the people I loved would see me." I could hear whispers. Someone gasped softly. but I couldn't stop. The truth was finally finding its way out. I spent my whole life trying to earn approval that was never mine to begin with. But today, I glanced at Liam, who looked both proud and terrified. I realized I don't need it anymore. I heard the clinking of a fork drop. The DJ froze. Even the lights seemed to hum louder. My mother stood up slowly. Her voice, calm but trembling, cut through the silence. "What are you doing?" I turned toward her, telling the truth. Her face flushed red, the kind of red that came not from shame but from fury. "This is not the time or place," I smiled faintly. "You've had a lifetime to speak your truth. You chose silence, so now it's my turn." The room was no longer mine. It was a courtroom, and every face around us was a silent witness. "I used to think you hated me," I said softly. "But I understand now. You hated yourself. You saw something in me that reminded you of what you lost." She blinked, her mouth opening as if to reply, but no words came. My father stood halfway up, torn between his wife and his daughter. Typical. Always in the middle, always avoiding the mess. "Sweetheart, please," he whispered. "Let's not ruin the evening." I turned to him, and for the first time, I didn't feel small. "Dad, the evening was ruined the moment Mom whispered that I didn't deserve the man I love." The guests shifted uncomfortably. Some looked away, some stared frozen. But I wasn't embarrassed. I felt lighter. My mother's composure cracked. "You're humiliating yourself." I shook my head. "No, Mom, I'm freeing myself." For a heartbeat, there was nothing. No sound, no breath, just that fragile space between old wounds and new beginnings. Then Liam stood. He came up beside me, his hand finding mine. "You don't owe anyone an apology," he said quietly. "Only for me to hear." And just like that, the tremor in my hands stopped. We left the microphone where it was and walked out together. Past the whispers, past the flashing eyes, past the woman who gave me life but never once made me feel alive. Outside, the air was cool and merciful. The night sky stretched wide, indifferent to everything that had just happened. Liam wrapped his arms around me, and for the first time that day, I allowed myself to breathe. "Are you okay?" he asked. I nodded. "Yeah. For the first time in my life, I think I am." But when I glanced back through the glass doors of the hall, I saw her, my mother, standing there watching us. Not angry now, just hollow. And somehow that hurt more than all her words ever did. Because deep down, I realized she wasn't just my villain, she was her own prisoner. But what she did next, even I didn't see coming. She showed up at our hotel the next morning. No warning, no call. Just a soft knock at the door while I was still in my wedding dress, sitting on the bed, staring at the crumpled bouquet beside me. Liam was in the shower. The sound of water drowned out everything except that knock. Persistent, familiar. I opened the door, and there she was. Makeup gone, eyes red, the edges of her voice frayed. "Can I come in?" she asked quietly. I hesitated. Every instinct screamed no. But something in her face, that fragile human flicker, made me step aside. She walked in, slow and careful, like she was afraid to break something. Maybe me, maybe herself. The silence stretched. The sound of dripping water filled the space between us. She sat down in the chair by the window, hands clasped like she was holding something together. "I didn't mean what I said," she began. I almost laughed. "You did. You always do. That's what makes it hurt." She looked away. "You think I hate you." I said nothing, because anything I said would sound like begging again. Then she whispered, "I was jealous." That word hung in the air like smoke. It didn't fit. Jealous. Of what? Of me. She looked up, and her voice trembled. "You have what I never did. Love that's real. Someone who sees you. I never learned how to accept that. Not for myself. Not for you." I didn't know what to say. I just stood there, barefoot on the carpet, watching the woman who raised me unravel for the first time in my life. When your father and I got married, she continued, I thought love was about control, about being chosen. But then I had you, and suddenly everyone chose you. Even him. He was different with you, softer, kinder, and I hated that. She buried her face in her hands. I hated that my own daughter made him love me less. The honesty was so raw, it almost didn't sound real. For a moment, I felt the little girl in me, the one who just wanted her mother to say something true, finally exhale. But truth doesn't always heal. Sometimes it just stops the bleeding long enough to feel the pain. I didn't come here for an apology, I said quietly. I came here to start over, with or without you. She looked up, eyes glistening. And if I can't change, then I'll still love you, I said, but from far away. The bathroom door opened. Liam stepped out, towel around his shoulders, surprised to see her. She stood, wiped her face quickly, and tried to smile. You chose well, she said softly to him. She's stronger than I ever was. He nodded. I know. She walked toward the door, hesitating for just a second. Then, almost in a whisper, she said, I hope one day you'll understand me. And then she was gone. For a long time, I stood there staring at the closed door, unsure if what I felt was forgiveness or just relief. Maybe both. That night, as the city lights blurred outside our window, I thought about how love isn't always warm. Sometimes it's cold and cracked and full of ghosts. But it's still love, the kind you learn from even when it breaks you. I reached for Liam's hand and said, I think I finally let her go. He smiled. No, you finally let yourself go. And in that quiet moment, I realized something I wish someone had told me years ago, that family doesn't always mean safety, and walking away doesn't always mean hate. Sometimes walking away is the loudest thing you can do.